On the night of July 1st, 1917, Samuel Cook stood outside Mount Zion Baptist Church in East St. Louis, Illinois. He had just finished a 12-hour shift at the Armour meatpacking plant. His hands were raw. His back ached. His clothes reeked of blood and animal fat. But he wasn't going home. Not yet. 40 other men stood with him, black men, factory workers, fathers, husbands, sons. They formed a circle on the church steps. Some held Bibles, others held rifles. Reverend Elijah Monroe led them in prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for another day of honest work. Protect our families. Give us strength for what's coming." They knew what was coming. For weeks, threats had been whispered on factory floors. White workers muttering about taking their jobs back. Union leaders holding secret meetings. Police driving through black neighborhoods at night, firing shots into homes just to terrorize families trying to sleep. 2 nights earlier, on June 28th, a police car had rolled down Broadway Avenue at midnight. Windows down. 4 white officers inside. They fired into homes randomly. 2 children were wounded. One was 5 years old. The other was 8. No arrests were made. No investigation was launched. The message was clear. You are not safe. You are not protected. You are not wanted here. So Samuel Cook organized a defense committee. 60 black men who agreed to protect their community. They took shifts. They watched the streets. They armed themselves because the law would not defend them. Now at 11:30 on this July night, they heard it. The rumble of an engine. Headlights piercing the darkness. A black Ford sedan rolling slowly down Broadway Avenue. Too slow. Deliberately slow. The kind of slow that announces violence. Cook squinted. 4 white men inside. He saw the glint of metal. Guns. He shouted, "Take cover!" The car windows dropped. Pistol barrels emerged. Gunfire cracked through the humid summer air. Bullets slammed into the church wall. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. One bullet punched through the church door right where Reverend Monroe had been standing seconds before. Cook and his men returned fire. 8 shots rang out from their rifles. The Ford lurched forward, tires screeching, speeding away into darkness. They thought it was over. It had just begun. 45 minutes later, another car approached. No siren, no markings. But this one carried 2 detectives, Samuel Frank and William Coppage. Plain clothes, police officers. They were not the shooters from before. They had no connection to the earlier attack. But Samuel Cook didn't know that. In the darkness, all he saw was another unmarked vehicle approaching the same way the shooters had come. His men opened fire. Detective Frank died instantly. Detective Coppage was critically wounded. He would die 2 days later. By sunrise on July 2nd, the entire city knew. Black men killed white police. That's how the newspapers would frame it. That's how the politicians would spin it. That's how 3,000 white men would justify what they were about to do. What happened in the next 72 hours would become the deadliest labor massacre in American history. Over 300 black men, women, and children murdered. 6,000 families burned out of their homes. An entire community erased. And for 50 years, not a single textbook in Illinois mentioned it. Not one. Until now. This is the story they buried. This is the truth they couldn't erase completely. This is your stolen inheritance. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why black unemployment in America is still double white unemployment in 2026. You will know why the wealth gap exists. You will see the system that created it. And you will never look at American labor history the same way again. Because East St. Louis wasn't a race riot. It was economic genocide, organized, deliberate, systematic. And if you think this is just ancient history that doesn't matter today, you're about to find out how wrong you are. This massacre is the reason your family rents instead of owns. This massacre is why Black workers still face discrimination. This massacre set the blueprint for destroying Black economic power in America. They tried to erase this story, but your ancestors lived it. Your grandparents survived it. You carry this legacy in your DNA. And today, you're going to learn what really happened. Every name, every date, every dollar stolen, every lie they told to cover it up. Are you ready? Because what you're about to hear will shatter everything you thought you knew about America. Everything you learned in school about labor movements and racial progress. All of it was sanitized, whitewashed, carefully edited to hide the truth. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. It rises. It breaks through. It demands to be heard. And today, you're going to hear it. All of it. Let me take you back to 1916, 1 year before the massacre. East St. Louis, Illinois was booming. This wasn't some small town. This was one of the largest industrial centers in the American Midwest. 8 massive meatpacking plants: Armour, Swift, Morris. These companies processed millions of pounds of meat every single day. 12 steel mills. The Aluminum Ore Company was the largest aluminum producer in the country. Railroads crisscrossed the city, coal mines, chemical plants, factories everywhere. If you wanted work in 1916, East St. Louis had it, and the pay was good, $3 to $4 a day. That might not sound like much to you now, but in the Jim Crow South, a Black man was lucky to make $1 a day picking cotton. If the crop was good, if the white landowner felt like paying him. So they came, thousands of them. Black families fleeing Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, fleeing debt peonage, fleeing sharecropping that kept them enslaved in everything but name, fleeing the KKK, fleeing lynchings that happened so frequently that newspapers barely reported them anymore. This was the Great Migration, one of the largest internal migrations in human history. Between 1916 and 1917, over 10,000 Black Americans moved to East St. Louis. In just 2 years, the Black population doubled, from 6,000 to 12,000. They came because of letters. Letters sent home from relatives who'd moved north first. Letters that said, "There's work here. Real work, factory work, union work. You can make enough to buy a house, send your kids to school, live like a human being for the first time in your life." Dr. LeRoy Bundy received one of those letters in 1914. He was living in Vicksburg, Mississippi, 30 years old, a dentist. Educated at Meharry Medical College in Nashville, one of the few schools that trained Black doctors. He had a small practice in Vicksburg, but he couldn't grow it. White patients wouldn't see a Black dentist. Black patients were too poor to pay. And every day he lived under the constant threat of violence that defined life for educated Black men in Mississippi. So in 1915, Dr. Bundy moved his family to East St. Louis. His wife, Martha. 3 children, 8 years old, 5 years old, 2 years old. He opened a dental practice on 10th Street. Within a year, he had over 200 patients. Black factory workers who finally had steady income and could afford dental care. His practice was worth $2,000. His house, a 2-story home he purchased outright, was valued at $4,500. In 1917, that's the equivalent of over $150,000 today. Dr. Bundy wasn't rich, but he was building wealth, real wealth, generational wealth, and he wasn't alone. Samuel Cook arrived in 1916. He was 34 years old, born in Jackson, Mississippi. Worked on farms his whole life until the boll weevil infestation destroyed the cotton crop in 1915. No cotton meant no work. No work meant starvation. Cook had a wife, Annie, 5 children, and 3 orphaned nieces and nephews he'd taken in after their parents died of typhoid fever. He heard about jobs in East St. Louis from a cousin who worked at the Swift meatpacking plant. So Cook packed everything his family owned into a single wagon and took a train north. Brought 15 relatives with him. When he arrived, Swift hired him the same day. Started him at $350 a day. Within 6 months, Cook was promoted to foreman. He supervised a crew of 20 men on the night shift. He was saving $300 to buy land. $300 doesn't sound like much, but that was 6 months' worth of savings. More money than he'd saved in his entire life in Mississippi. Cook was building something, a future, a foundation, something to pass down to his children. Reverend Elijah Monroe had been in East St. Louis since 1912. He was 42 years old when he arrived from Natchez, Mississippi. A Baptist preacher who'd spent 15 years leading small congregations in the Deep South. Watching his congregants live in fear, watching them get cheated by landlords, beaten by sheriffs, lynched for looking at white women the wrong way. He was tired of preaching funerals for young men who'd done nothing wrong except be born black in Mississippi. So Monroe moved to East St. Louis and started Mount Zion Baptist Church. He raised money from black factory workers, built the church with his own hands, literally, hammered every nail, sawed every board. The church building was worth $6,000 by 1917. It held 400 congregants every Sunday. Reverend Monroe didn't just preach. He ran a literacy program, taught factory workers to read and write, helped new arrivals find jobs and housing. His church was the beating heart of the black community in East St. Louis. These 3 men, Dr. Bundy, Samuel Cook, Reverend Monroe, they represent thousands of black families who came to East St. Louis seeking dignity, seeking opportunity, seeking the chance to work hard and build something for their children. And white East St. Louis hated them for it. Not all white people. Let me be clear. There were white families who minded their own business, white workers who worked alongside black workers without problems. But those voices were drowned out by the loudest and most violent elements: white labor unions, white politicians, and white factory owners who saw an opportunity to pit workers against each other. Here's what you have to understand. The factory owners didn't care about white workers or black workers. They cared about profit. When white workers organized unions and demanded higher wages, better conditions, fewer hours, the factory owners had a problem: pay more, make less profit. So they did what capitalists have always done. They found cheaper labor. And in 1916 and 1917, that cheaper labor was black migrants desperate for any work at any wage. The Aluminum Ore Company went on strike in May 1917. White workers organized by the American Federation of Labor walked off the job. They demanded 75 cents per hour, up from 60 cents. The company refused, so the union shut down production. Not a single worker crossed the picket line. For 3 weeks, the factory sat idle. Then the company made its move. They sent recruiters to Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, offered jobs to black workers, 50 cents an hour, 25 cents less than what white workers were demanding, but 50% more than what black workers were making in the South. To a man making $1 a day in Mississippi, 50 cents an hour was a fortune. The company didn't tell these black workers about the strike. They didn't explain that they were being used as strikebreakers. They just said there's work in Illinois. Good pay. Come now. 470 black workers arrived on May 15, 1917. They were loaded onto trains brought to East St. Louis and marched directly into the aluminum ore factory. The white strikers watched in fury as black men took their jobs, not for the wages they'd demanded, but for less than they'd been making before the strike. The union collapsed. White workers went back to work at the old wage, and they blamed black workers, not the company, not the capitalists who orchestrated the whole thing. They blamed the black men who'd been lied to and exploited just as much as they had been. That's when the threat started. White workers cornered black workers in the factory, told them to go back to where they came from, told them if they didn't leave, something bad would happen. Black workers reported the threats to management. Management did nothing. Reported them to police. Police did nothing. On May 27, 1917, it exploded. 3,000 white workers, many of them union members, marched into the black neighborhood. They attacked randomly, pulled black men off streetcars and beat them in the street, smashed windows of black-owned businesses, set fire to homes. Police stood and watched. Some of them laughed. A few joined in. By the end of that day, 3 black men were dead. Over 50 were hospitalized with injuries. Hundreds fled the city, leaving everything behind. And not a single white person was arrested. Not one. Dr. Bundy wrote a letter to the governor of Illinois. He described the violence, pleaded for protection, begged for state intervention. The governor never responded. The letter was filed away and forgotten. Samuel Cook knew letters wouldn't save them, so he organized the Worker Protection Committee. 60 black men, factory workers, veterans, men who'd fought in the Spanish-American War, men who knew how to shoot. They armed themselves with rifles and shotguns, organized patrol shifts, decided that if the police wouldn't protect black families, they'd protect themselves. Reverend Monroe opened the church 24 hours a day. Families who felt unsafe in their homes came to sleep in the church basement. Women and children mostly. They brought blankets, food, Bibles. They prayed. They waited. They hoped the violence was over. It wasn't over. It had barely begun. June 1917 was a month of terror. White mobs roamed black neighborhoods at night, sometimes 50 men, sometimes 200. They fired guns into homes, threw rocks through windows, shouted threats, called black residents every racist slur you can imagine, and some you probably can't. The police didn't stop them. In fact, on June 28th, 2 police officers drove through the black neighborhood in an unmarked car and fired shots into houses. No provocation, no reason, just pure terrorism. 2 children were hit. A 5-year-old girl shot in the arm. An 8-year-old boy shot in the leg. Both survived, but the message was clear. Even the police want you gone. That's when Samuel Cook made his decision. We're not running. We're not leaving. If they come for us, we fight back. He gathered his committee, told them to bring weapons, told them to prepare for the worst. And on the night of July 1st, they took their positions outside Mount Zion Baptist Church. 40 men, Bibles in one hand, rifles in the other, ready to defend their families or die trying. Then came the Ford sedan at 11:30 p.m. 4 white men, guns drawn, shots fired at the church. Cook and his men returned fire. The car sped away. 45 minutes later, the second car, an unmarked police vehicle. 2 detectives, Samuel Frank, William Coppage. They had no connection to the earlier attack. They were investigating a separate incident. But in the darkness, in the chaos, in the fear, Cook's men saw only another threat. They fired. Frank died instantly. Coppage died 2 days later in the hospital. It was a tragic mistake. A terrible, fatal miscalculation born of weeks of terror and zero police protection. But it gave white East St. Louis exactly the excuse they'd been waiting for. Black men killed white police. That was the headline. That was the narrative. And that was the justification for what came next. By 8 a.m. on July 2nd, the mob was forming. Not spontaneously, not randomly. This was organized. The American Federation of Labor called an emergency meeting at Labor Hall. Union leaders stood on stages and whipped white workers into a frenzy. They didn't talk about the company that had exploited everyone. They didn't talk about the capitalists who'd pitted white and black workers against each other. They talked about black men killing white police, black men taking white jobs, black men invading their city. 3,000 white men gathered. They brought hammers, crowbars, axes, hunting rifles, shotguns, pistols. This wasn't a riot. This was a planned military assault. And the target was every black person in East St. Louis. Police Chief Ransford Payne was asked what his officers would do. His response is documented in congressional testimony. He said, and I quote, "Do not interfere with white citizens defending themselves." That was the official police position. Stand down. Let it happen. The police chief of a major American city gave white terrorists permission to commit mass murder, and they did. At 9 a.m., the mob moved into the black neighborhood from 4 directions: north, south, east, west. They had a system. Mark the houses with white chalk. A big letter N on the door. N for Negro. Then set it on fire. Wait for people to run out. Beat them. Shoot them. Kill them in the street. By 10 a.m., Samuel Cook knew Mount Zion Church was a target. He gathered 40 armed men inside. Reverend Monroe led 200 women and children into the basement. Dr. Bundy brought his medical bag ready to treat the wounded. They barricaded the doors, prepared to defend. At 10:30, 500 white men surrounded the church. They shouted, "Send out the killers." They meant Cook and his men. The men who'd shot the detectives the night before. Cook shouted back through a window, "We will not surrender to a lynch mob." The mob threw torches onto the roof. The old wooden shingles caught fire immediately. Flames spread fast. Smoke poured into the church. Cook's men fired out the windows. 3 white attackers fell. The mob pulled back, regrouped, returned with reinforcements. By 11:30, 1,000 white men had surrounded the church. They had rifles now. They fired from 3 sides. The battle lasted 45 minutes. 4 black men inside the church were killed. Bullets tore through the walls. Women screamed in the basement. Children cried. Reverend Monroe prayed aloud, his voice booming over the gunfire. God protect us. God save us. God give us strength. Samuel Cook made the impossible decision. We have to evacuate. Save the women and children. His men used axes to break through the back wall, created an escape route into an alley. At 12:15 p.m., they split into 4 groups. Reverend Monroe led the women and children toward the Mississippi River. Cook and 15 men stayed behind to cover their retreat. They fought, fired, retreated from room to room, house to house. By 12:30, the mob overran the church. They poured gasoline on everything, set it ablaze. Mount Zion Baptist Church, built by Reverend Monroe's own hands, worth $6,000, the spiritual home of 400 families, burned to the ground in minutes. 6 of Cook's men died in the fighting, shot in the back as they ran, beaten to death in the streets, lynched from telephone poles. But the women and children made it to the river. Reverend Monroe got them across the bridge into Missouri. 200 people saved. It was the only victory of the day, and it came at a terrible cost. What happened next wasn't battle, it was slaughter. From 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. on July 2nd, white mobs rampaged through every black neighborhood in East St. Louis. They had a system. Mark the house with chalk. Burn it. Kill anyone who runs out. They dragged black men off streetcars and beat them to death in front of crowds. They shot black women who were running away, shot them in the back. They grabbed black children and held them while their parents were murdered. Some children were beaten. Some were taken and never seen again. Witnesses reported babies thrown back into burning buildings. The police did not intervene. In many cases, they participated. Photographs from that day, and yes, photographs exist, show police officers standing next to lynched bodies, smiling. Show police officers helping mobs set fires. Congressional testimony later confirmed that police not only failed to stop the massacre, but actively aided it. By nightfall on July 2nd, 312 buildings had been burned, 244 homes, 44 businesses, 24 churches and schools. The entire black business district was ash. Every black church was destroyed. Every black school was gone. And the death toll. The official count was 39 black people dead. 39. That's what the city of East St. Louis reported. That's what went into the history books. But witnesses told a different story. They reported bodies loaded onto wagons and dumped into the Mississippi River. They reported mass graves dug in southern Illinois. They reported seeing at least 200 bodies, maybe more. The Chicago Defender, a black newspaper, estimated between 100 and 300 dead. Modern historians believe the true number is closer to 250. Why the discrepancy? Because they hid the bodies. Because they didn't count black deaths as important. Because recording the true scale of the massacre would have made it undeniable that this was genocide. So they lied. They minimized. They covered it up. On July 3rd, 6,000 black residents of East St. Louis fled. 75% of the entire black population. They walked across the Eads Bridge into Missouri with nothing but the clothes on their backs. No possessions, no money, no documents. Everything they owned was ash. Dr. Bundy lost his home worth $4,500. Lost his dental practice worth $2,000. Lost his equipment worth $1,500. Lost his savings of $800. Total loss, nearly $9,000 in 1917 money. That's over $200,000 in 2026. Gone in one day. Samuel Cook lost everything too. His wife Annie and their 8 children made it out alive, but that's all they had. Life, no home, no savings, no future. Cook himself was arrested 3 days later, charged with manslaughter for the deaths of the 2 detectives. He faced the death penalty, not for defending his family, not for protecting his community, for killing 2 white men, even though it was a mistake made under circumstances of terror that the police had created. Reverend Monroe was charged with inciting a riot, the man who saved 200 women and children, the man who built a church with his bare hands. He was labeled a criminal. He fled to St. Louis before he could be arrested, never returned to East St. Louis, rebuilt his ministry in exile. But here's what they want you to forget. Here's what they erased from every textbook. East St. Louis wasn't unique. It wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't an unfortunate tragedy. It was part of a pattern, a systematic pattern of destroying Black economic power in America. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let me show you the evidence. Let me take you to Springfield, Illinois, August 14, 1908, 9 years before East St. Louis. Springfield was the state capital, the hometown of Abraham Lincoln, the place where the great emancipator began his political career. You'd think Springfield would be a beacon of racial progress, right? Wrong. A white woman falsely accused a Black man of assault. She later admitted she lied. But before the truth came out, 5,000 white residents formed a mob. They stormed the Levee the Black neighborhood. They lynched 2 Black men, hung them from trees in front of crowds. They burned 40 homes. They destroyed every Black-owned business in a 6-block radius. 2,000 Black residents, 1/3 of Springfield's Black population, fled the city permanently. The police stood by and watched. The governor called in the National Guard, but they arrived too late. Most of the destruction was already done. And here's the kicker. The white mob specifically targeted successful Black business owners, barbers, restaurant owners, shop owners, people who'd built wealth. The mob didn't go after the poorest Black residents. They went after the ones who were thriving, the ones who threatened the idea that Black people should stay poor and powerless. 7 people died officially, but witnesses reported at least 15 bodies. The city buried the evidence, called it a race riot, blamed both sides, and within a year, Springfield's newspapers stopped mentioning it entirely. Erased. But here's what they couldn't erase. The Springfield massacre directly led to the founding of the NAACP in 1909. A group of Black and white activists said enough. We need a national organization to fight this terror. So out of that darkness came an organization that would fight for civil rights for the next century. But the people of Springfield who died, their names are still mostly unknown. Now let me take you to Atlanta, Georgia, September 22, 1906. Atlanta was booming. Black businesses were thriving in the Darktown district. Barbershops, grocery stores, restaurants, print shops, insurance companies. Black wealth was growing, and white Atlanta couldn't stand it. 4 newspapers published false stories about Black men attacking white women. 4 separate accusations. All lies, all later proven false. But the damage was done. On September 22nd, 10,000 white Atlantans took to the streets. They pulled Black passengers off streetcars and beat them to death. They stormed Darktown and destroyed 70 Black-owned businesses. They killed between 25 and 40 Black men. Not a single white person died, not one. The governor declared martial law. The militia restored order. But the economic damage was permanent. Darktown never recovered. The Black business district that had been thriving was gone. And the official response, a state commission, concluded that Black criminals had provoked whites. Victim blaming. The real criminals, the white mob, faced zero consequences. The financial losses, over $1 million in 1906 money. That's $30 million today. Gone, stolen, never repaid. And Atlanta's textbooks barely mention it. Let me take you to one more. Wilmington, North Carolina, November 10, 1898. This one's different. This one's even worse. Because Wilmington wasn't just a massacre, it was a coup. The only successful coup d'etat in American history. In 1898, Wilmington was majority black, and black people held political power. 3 black aldermen on the city council, a black magistrate, black police officers, a fusionist government where black and white Republicans worked together. It was a functioning, multiracial democracy, and white supremacists could not tolerate it. Alfred Moore Waddell, a former Confederate officer, led the conspiracy. He organized 2,000 armed white men, called themselves the Red Shirts. They had a plan: overthrow the elected government, expel every black leader, install white supremacist rule, and they executed it perfectly. On November 10, they started by burning the Daily Record, the black-owned newspaper. The editor, Alex Manley, had written editorials challenging white supremacy. They burned his press, destroyed his building. Then they marched through the streets, killing any black man they saw. Estimates range from 60 to 300 dead. Bodies were thrown into the Cape Fear River. Mass graves were dug outside the city. The exact number will never be known. Then they went to the mayor's office, forced the mayor and city council to resign at gunpoint, installed Waddell as the new mayor, exiled every black elected official, kicked them out of the city under threat of death. Black professionals, doctors, lawyers, business owners all told to leave within hours or be killed. Over 2,000 black residents fled Wilmington that week, and the federal government did nothing. President McKinley was informed. He refused to intervene, said it was a state matter. North Carolina's governor supported the coup. The white supremacists won. They held power for decades, and they renamed the event, called it the Wilmington Race Riot. Not the Wilmington Massacre, not the Wilmington Coup, riot. As if both sides were responsible. As if an armed overthrow of democracy was just a spontaneous outburst of violence. It took over 100 years for North Carolina to officially acknowledge what really happened. In 2006, a state commission finally called it what it was: a massacre, a coup, a turning point that ended multiracial democracy in the South and ushered in Jim Crow. Do you see the pattern now? Springfield, 1908. Black workers build wealth. White mob attacks. 2,000 expelled. Atlanta, 1906. Black businesses thrive. White mob attacks. 70 stores destroyed. Wilmington, 1898. Black people hold political power. White coup. Entire leadership exiled. East St. Louis, 1917. Black workers take factory jobs. White mob attacks. 6,000 lose homes. Every single time black people gained economic or political power, white supremacy responded with organized violence. Every single time, the official story called it a race riot, as if both sides were equally responsible. Every single time, police either stood by or participated. Every single time, the death toll was undercounted. Every single time, the black community lost wealth, property, and lives. Every single time, white perpetrators went unpunished. Every single time, history books minimized or erased the truth. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't spontaneous anger. This was systematic terrorism designed to destroy black wealth, prevent black economic mobility, maintain white economic supremacy, and send a message. Know your place. And it worked. By 1920, Black Americans had been robbed of an estimated $50 to $100 billion in today's money through these massacres alone. Not counting slavery, not counting Jim Crow, not counting redlining. Just these so-called riots. This was economic warfare. And they won. But only because we forgot. Only because they erased the history. Only because they rewrote the story to hide what really happened. But the evidence exists. Congressional testimonies, newspaper archives, survivor accounts, photographs, property records, insurance claims. It's all there, buried in archives, ignored by mainstream historians for decades. But it's there, and now you know. Now you can never know. Now you have to decide what you're going to do with this truth. But here's the part that should make you furious. The cover-up. Because the massacre was only half the crime. The other half was making sure you never learned about it. Making sure your children never learned about it. Making sure 3 generations of Americans grew up thinking this never happened. Let me show you exactly how they did it. First, they destroyed the evidence. Physically destroyed it. On July 3rd through July 5th, 1917, the city of East St. Louis hired cleanup crews. That's what they called them, cleanup crews. Their job was supposedly to clear rubble and restore order. But what they really did was bulldoze every trace of what happened. 312 buildings had burned. Instead of preserving them as evidence, instead of documenting the crime scene, they knocked everything down, turned it into piles of anonymous brick and ash. No one was allowed to return to collect belongings. No one was allowed to sift through ruins for family heirlooms or important documents. Armed guards kept Black residents away while white workers erased the neighborhood. Then, in August 1917, something convenient happened. A fire broke out at the county recorder's office, the building that housed all the property records, all the deeds showing who owned what, all the documentation of Black wealth in East St. Louis. It burned, mysteriously, conveniently, and with it proof of who owned which properties disappeared. Dr. Bundy's deed to his $4,000 home gone. Samuel Cook's savings records showing he had $300 deposited at First National Bank. The bank claimed no record existed. Reverend Monroe's documentation that Mount Zion Baptist Church was worth $6,000 vanished. Insurance companies told Black residents they had no proof of ownership. Therefore, no valid claims. Medical records from Dr. Bundy's dental practice burned with his office. Church records from Mount Zion showing births, marriages, baptisms going back years burned with the church. School records for Black children. The schools were destroyed and the records never transferred. It's like an entire community was digitally erased, except this was 1917, so it was literally erased. And the bodies. Let's talk about the bodies. The official coroner's report listed 39 dead, but multiple witnesses testified to Congress that they saw bodies loaded onto freight train cars heading south. A railroad worker named James Morrison gave sworn testimony. He said, "I saw at least 20 bodies wrapped in canvas loaded onto freight cars at midnight on July 3rd. I asked my supervisor where they were going. He told me to mind my business or I'd be fired." Other witnesses reported bodies thrown into the Mississippi River. The river was the easiest way to dispose of evidence. No body, no murder charge. No body, no death certificate. No death certificate, no official record. Another witness, a white woman named Helen Edwards, testified that she saw police officers dragging bodies to the riverbank and pushing them in. She was horrified. She reported it to the mayor's office. Her complaint was never filed. Families who wanted to bury their loved ones properly were threatened. If you make a fuss, if you demand an investigation, if you don't accept the official story, you might be next. So people buried relatives in unmarked graves. No headstones, no records, just quiet funerals in the middle of the night. Entire families disappeared from East St. Louis, and no one knows if they fled or were killed. There's strong evidence of a mass grave somewhere in southern Illinois. Oral histories passed down through black families mention a field where the bodies were taken. But no one has ever been allowed to excavate. No investigation has ever been authorized. The truth is buried literally, and the government prefers to keep it that way. The total financial theft estimates range from $5 to $10 million in 1917 money. That's between $100 million and $200 million today. And not one penny was ever repaid. Not one family received compensation. Not one insurance claim was honored. The wealth was just gone, erased, as if it never existed. Now let's talk about the legal suppression. Because after you destroy the physical evidence, you need to control the legal narrative. And they did that masterfully. Congress held hearings in July 1917. The special committee to investigate the East St. Louis riots. Notice the language, riots, not massacre. Riots implies both sides fighting. Massacre implies one side slaughtering the other. Language matters. It shapes perception. And they chose their words carefully. 105 witnesses testified. Black survivors described the terror, described police standing by, described organized mobs with lists of addresses, described children being killed. Their testimony was powerful. It was detailed. It was damning. And then the committee issued its findings. Both sides were equally responsible. That was the conclusion. Black and white residents both engaged in violence. The committee blamed Negro migration for causing tension. They said too many black workers came too fast, and it overwhelmed the city's ability to maintain racial harmony. Read that again. They blame the victims, blame black people for daring to seek work, blame black families for fleeing poverty and terror in the South. Blame migration, not terrorism. The committee didn't recommend a single prosecution of mob leaders, didn't call for police reform, didn't suggest compensation for victims. Instead, they recommended slowing down black migration from the South. The solution, according to Congress, was fewer black people, not justice. But they did prosecute someone, Samuel Cook, the man who defended his community, the man who organized armed resistance. He and 11 other survivors were charged with manslaughter for the deaths of detectives Frank and Coppage. They faced execution. Think about that. The men who killed hundreds faced nothing. The men who defended themselves faced death. Cook's trial was a farce. All-white jury, white judge, white prosecutor. The prosecutor argued that black residents had no right to arm themselves, that defending your family from a terrorist mob was illegal, that firing on police, even in the darkness, even after weeks of police terrorism, even by mistake, was unforgivable. Cook was convicted, sentenced to 14 years hard labor. He served 11 years before being released. When he got out, he was broken. His health destroyed by prison. His family scattered. His community gone. He died in 1934, penniless. No one knows where he's buried. Dr. Bundy fled to Chicago before he could be arrested. He was charged with inciting riot in absentia. The charge was never dropped. He couldn't return to Illinois for the rest of his life. He rebuilt his dental practice in Chicago, worked until he was 70, died in 1955. His children inherited nothing. The wealth he'd built, the $4,000 home, the $2,000 practice, all gone. Reverend Monroe was also charged. He made it to St. Louis, just across the river, built a new church there. But he never forgot Mount Zion. According to his granddaughter, who was interviewed in 1998, Monroe had nightmares for the rest of his life. Dreams of the church burning, dreams of children screaming, dreams of running through fire. He died in 1958 at age 83. His last words, according to family, were, "Tell them what they did. Tell them the truth." The legal system protected the murderers and punished the victims. That's not an accident. That's the system working exactly as designed. A grand jury investigated 3,000 participants in the mob. 3,000. They indicted 9. 9 people out of 3,000. 9 people were charged with crimes related to the massacre. 4 were convicted. 4. The sentences ranged from 2 to 5 years. All 4 were released after 14 months for good behavior, 14 months for participating in mass murder. Meanwhile, Samuel Cook served 11 years for defending his family. Police Chief Ransford Payne, the man who ordered his officers not to interfere with white citizens defending themselves, faced 0 consequences. He wasn't fired. He wasn't investigated. He wasn't charged. He remained police chief until 1921. Then he retired with full pension. Mayor Fred Mollman, who'd ignored Dr. Bundy's warnings, who'd refused to call in the National Guard until it was too late, who'd blame black migrants for the violence he ran for re-election in 1919. And he won. White voters rewarded him. The leaders of the American Federation of Labor, who'd organized the mob at Labor Hall, who'd whipped white workers into a murderous frenzy, who'd orchestrated the entire massacre as a union action. They faced nothing. No investigation, no charges, no consequences. The AFL continued to exclude black workers from membership for another 30 years. The massacre achieved its goal. It sent a message to black workers everywhere. Stay out of our unions. Stay out of our jobs, or this will happen to you. Now let's talk about how they erase this from education. Because legal suppression is temporary. But if you can control what children learn, you control the future. You control memory itself. Illinois school textbooks from the 1920s through the 1980s mentioned East St. Louis exactly 0 times, not once. Students could graduate high school in Illinois without ever hearing about the deadliest labor massacre in state history. How is that possible? How does something that big disappear from education simple? Textbook publishers cater to school boards. School boards are elected. And white voters don't want their children learning that their grandparents were terrorists. They don't want to confront the ugly truth. So when textbooks were being written in the 1920s and 30s, publishers made a calculation: include the massacre and lose sales in white districts, exclude it, and everyone's happy. Well, everyone except the descendants of victims. But their opinions didn't matter. When East St. Louis was mentioned, at all the language was carefully sanitized. One textbook from 1948 called it an unfortunate incident during wartime tensions. Incident, like it was a fender bender. Another textbook from 1962 said there were racial clashes in several cities during this period as Americans adjusted to rapid social change. clashes adjusted. As if mass murder is just part of adjusting. The word massacre was never used. The word terrorism was never used. The phrase white mob was never used. Instead, textbooks used passive voice. Buildings were burned. People were killed. Violence occurred. No subject, no actor, no one responsible. Just things that happen like natural disasters. And crucially, textbooks never explained why it happened. Never explained the economic motivation. Never explained that white unions orchestrated it. Never explained that corporations used black workers as pawns. Never connected it to the broader pattern of destroying black wealth. Students learned it happened if they learned anything at all, but never learned the why. Never learned who benefited. Never learned the system that made it possible. Without context, without causation, without pattern recognition, the massacre becomes meaningless. Just a random outburst of violence in a less enlightened time. Oh, people were racist back then. Oh, things were different. No lessons learned, no systems questioned, no present-day implications. That's the goal of educational erasure. Not to make you forget entirely, but to make you misunderstand, to strip away meaning, to prevent you from seeing that the same system still operates today, just with different methods. Teachers who tried to teach the truth faced consequences. In 1968, a black history teacher in East St. Louis named Margaret Williams tried to teach about the massacre. She brought in newspaper clippings from 1917, showed students photographs, had survivors come speak to her class. The school board fired her for teaching unapproved material and causing racial divisiveness. Racial divisiveness. Teaching history is divisive if the history makes white people uncomfortable. It wasn't until 1990, 73 years after the massacre, that Illinois added it to the official curriculum. 73 years. 3 generations grew up not knowing. 3 generations of black students never learned what happened to their great-grandparents. 3 generations of white students never learned what their great-grandparents did. And even now, in 2026, most Americans have never heard of the East St. Louis massacre. Ask 10 people on the street. Maybe one knows. Maybe. It's still not taught with the same emphasis as other historical events. It's a footnote, an elective topic, something teachers cover if they have time. Compare that to how we teach World War II. Every student knows about Pearl Harbor, D-Day, the Holocaust. Those events are taught in detail every year in multiple classes because we decided those events matter. We decided students need to know. We created a national consensus that this history is important. But East St. Louis, Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, we decided those don't matter as much. We decided students can graduate without knowing. And that decision reveals everything. It reveals who gets to define which history matters. It reveals whose suffering gets remembered and whose gets forgotten. Now let's talk about the media, because the press in 1917 didn't just report the massacre. They shaped it. They framed it. They created the narrative that justified it and then erased it. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the biggest newspaper in the region, ran this headline on July 3rd. Negroes attack police, whites retaliate. That was the headline. Not white mob massacres hundreds. Not police allow genocide. No. Negroes attack, whites retaliate. Victim and perpetrator reversed. The article describes Samuel Cook and his men as a band of armed Negro agitators. Described the white mob as angry citizens seeking justice. The 2 dead detectives were given full biographies, names, ages, families, years of service. humanized completely. The hundreds of dead black residents referred to as casualties. No names, no ages, no families, no humanity. The Chicago Tribune ran a similar story. Race riot in East St. Louis claims dozens. Dozens. Not hundreds, not 300. Dozens. And notice race riot. Both sides fighting. Not one side slaughtering the other. The New York Times coverage was even worse. Their headline read, "Negroes and Whites Clash in Labor Dispute." Clash, dispute. Like it was a disagreement. Like it was a negotiation gone wrong. The article blamed black migrants for taking white jobs. Blamed black workers for not understanding Northern labor politics. The article interviewed white union leaders who said, "We tried to warn them. They wouldn't listen." Victim blaming in print. Every major white newspaper followed the same playbook. Minimize black deaths, emphasize white grievances, use passive voice, avoid calling it terrorism, frame it as unfortunate but understandable given the circumstances, and most importantly, move on quickly. By mid-July, the story had disappeared from front pages. By August, it was rarely mentioned. By September, the news cycle had moved on entirely. But the black press told a different story. The Chicago Defender, the most widely read black newspaper in America, ran this headline: "East St. Louis Massacre, hundreds of Negroes slaughtered." They called it what it was: massacre, slaughter. They published names of victims. They published photographs of burned bodies of lynched men hanging from telephone poles of crying children. They called it an American pogrom. They compared it to the Russian massacres of Jews. They demanded federal intervention. And white officials responded by banning the Chicago Defender. The city of East St. Louis made it illegal to sell the Defender within city limits. Police arrested newsstand owners who carried it. They confiscated copies at train stations. They threatened black residents with prosecution for inciting riot if they were caught reading it. Think about that. The newspaper that told the truth was banned. The newspapers that lied faced no consequences. That tells you everything about who controls the narrative. Power decides what's true. Power decides what can be said. And in 1917, black voices had no power. This media manipulation continued for decades. From the 1920s through the 1960s, mainstream American media rarely mentioned East St. Louis. When it was mentioned, always as race riot, never as massacre. Always with both sides' language, never with accountability. The 70s brought the civil rights movement and new attention to forgotten history. Some journalists and historians began investigating. But by then, 60 years had passed. Most survivors were dead. Most witnesses were gone. The physical evidence had been destroyed. The paper trail had been burned or buried. Reconstructing the truth became archaeology, digging through fragments and contradictions. In 1990, a historian named Elliot Rudwick published a comprehensive book on the massacre. It was the first full academic treatment. He'd spent years tracking down survivor testimonies, reading congressional records, piecing together what really happened. His book should have been a revelation. It should have changed how we teach this history, but most Americans never heard of it. It was published by an academic press, sold mostly to libraries, never made bestseller lists, never got adapted into a movie or documentary. Compare that to how other historical events get memorialized. We make movies about everything, but not this. In 2017, the 100th anniversary, there were some commemorations, a few newspaper articles, a small ceremony in East St. Louis. but nothing like the attention given to other centennials. No presidential proclamation, no national moment of silence, no primetime specials. The erasure continues, even when we pretend to remember. And here's why. Because telling the full truth about East St. Louis means admitting uncomfortable facts. It means admitting that organized labor, the unions we celebrate, participated in racial terrorism. It means admitting that police, the institution we're told to trust, enabled mass murder. It means admitting that capitalism, the system we're told, creates opportunity, deliberately pitted workers against each other for profit. It means admitting that white wealth in America was often built directly on the destruction of black wealth. Those admissions threaten foundational myths. The myth that America is a meritocracy, the myth that hard work leads to success, the myth that racial disparities exist because of cultural differences, not systematic theft. So the story stays buried, not completely, just enough. Just enough that most people don't know. Just enough that it doesn't disrupt the comfortable narrative. But you know now. You can't unknow it. And that knowledge demands something from you. It demands that you see the present differently. Because East St. Louis didn't happen in a vacuum. It wasn't ancient history. It's connected directly to the world you live in right now. Let me show you how.